Good morning, pilgrims. Hey, this morning I want to talk to you a little bit about lodgings. I have a blog, but for some people that don't like watching the blog, I thought I would do a quick video. Actually, it's going to be a long video because there are a lot of photos. This will help you decide where you want to sleep along the Camino because there's a wide range when it comes to places to sleep. So the first thing are parochials. Parochials are run by the Catholic Church. They're often donativo. You will sleep on mats on the floor almost always, but please don't let that put you off. The mats are really comfortable. In fact, they're a lot more comfortable than some of the sagging bunk beds that you might sleep on. They'll almost always feed you dinner, a family-style dinner and breakfast. So what I ask is that if you do stay in a parochial, that you are generous. Think about what it will cost you for a bed to sleep in and breakfast and dinner someplace else, and leave a generous donation. If all I get is a bed, a mat on the floor, and no food, I'll probably leave something like 8 or 10 euros. If they're going to feed me, I'm probably going to leave closer to 15 or 20 this year because prices are going up everywhere. And where in your country can you get a bed, dinner, and breakfast for 20 euros? The money that you leave tonight is going to pay for the pilgrim's food tomorrow. So if you only get bread and water tonight, it's because some pilgrims were really stingy yesterday. So those are parochials. Municipal albergues are run by the local government, usually the town, and the hospitaleros there may or may not have walked the Camino. Sometimes they know more than other times. Prices are usually set by the village, and they're usually not donativo, although sometimes they are. Associated albergues are sponsored by religious institutions or pilgrim groups like the Red albergues or confraternity albergues. Groups from different countries around the world, like American Pilgrims on the Camino, will sponsor associated albergues. They can be donativo, but usually they ask for a nominal fee, and they're usually staffed by volunteers who almost always have walked the Camino themselves. So they're good to have around. You can pick their brains if you have questions. In parochial, municipal, and associated albergues, you almost never get clean sheets every day. Now, some have gone to using paper covers, especially since COVID. Most will provide a pillow, but no clean pillowcase. So if that's important to you, you may want to carry along a pillowcase. They used to always provide blankets, but I understand in some albergues this was stopping first due to the bedbug problem and then due to COVID. I'm all wrapped up today because it's cold. We got like 10 inches of snow here over the week, and the house feels cold to me. Okay, privates. Privates are owned by private parties. Most privates give you linens, including a towel and clean bed sheets. Most change the sheets and pillowcases every day. Every private I've ever used supply blankets, and most are really clean and upscale because they're in competition with other privates, so they depend on good reviews. They often have fewer beds per room, anywhere from 2 to 6. And for a private albergue, a bed in a private albergue, I expect to pay 10 to 12 euros and up. I think the going rate lately is around 18. In some privates that I book for my group, I'll pay anywhere from 25 to 80 euros per day. So it just depends on the system. If you go to booking.com, they have a system of like how many points, 6 points, 7 point, 8 point, 9 point, and 10. And for my groups, I always book 8, 9, or 10. When I'm going by myself, I'll go down to 6 because it doesn't matter as much to me and they're cheaper. So any of the places may have one bed, or they might have 100 beds. The beds might be split up into different rooms, or they might be all in one room. You can usually find that information on gronze.com, GRONZE.com. Men and women are almost always in the same room. Sometimes if they're run by religious organizations, men and women are separated. I know that they're separated, or they used to be separated at Trinidad de Ar. They used to be separated at the Benedictine place in Leon. But often both bedrooms and bathrooms are co-ed, like Roncesvalles. They have separate bathrooms, but the bedrooms are co-ed. Many albergues will have a common kitchen or at least a place to boil water. Sometimes it's just a microwave. Most of them will provide cutlery, cooking pots, and a refrigerator. But especially in Galicia, they often have a beautiful kitchen, but not one pot or pan or piece of silverware. And I asked once why they had these beautiful kitchens, but nothing in them. And they said because pilgrims stole it all and they just weren't going to replace it. And I really can't blame them. I think I've said that before. So the next step up is hostels, and hostels exist all along the route. A hostel might have several beds in one room for one price, like 10 to 18 euros, or they might offer a few private rooms for singles or doubles, which are from 18 to 50, or maybe even higher these days. Hostels often have a common kitchen. The private rooms almost always include linens. You should ask. The dorm rooms might not, so be sure to ask. It may be necessary to have a sleeping bag if you're staying in a dorm. And the price may or may not include breakfast the next morning. And usually when they say they include breakfast, it's a continental breakfast, what we would call a continental breakfast. It's coffee, tea, juice, bread, rolls, cookies, cheese, sometimes meat, jam, butter. So it's just something to get you down the road. Apartamentos turísticos are apartments that are rented for one or more nights. These can really be of value if you're traveling in a group. So you can also maybe make friends along the Camino and rent an apartment. I can usually expect to pay around 100 euros for an apartment that will sleep up to 8 people, depending on if they need a private room or twin beds. And a lot of those places also will have a sala, or what we would call a living room or den, and there'll be a fold-out bed or even more fold-out beds in there. So you can usually pack quite a few pilgrims into an apartment and end up paying not very much money at all. Often in apartments you will find washing machines, which is really nice, but be careful using those washing machines in Spain because they use very hot water and they really spin the heck out of your clothes. And if you have expensive clothes that you've bought at a sporting goods store like REI or something, nice woolens or something, they will ruin it, so be careful. I prefer just to hand wash my clothes unless they're just grubby clothes. But it's nice to have a washing machine, and almost always if there's a washing machine, they provide the laundry soap, so you don't have to carry laundry soap. The nice thing about apartments also is that they'll have a well-stocked kitchen where you can cook, and almost always there's a market nearby where you can buy food to cook, so that's good. In in parochials and in municipals and in private albergues, there is almost always a kitchen also, and sometimes they're well stocked with pots and pans, and sometimes they're not. As far as food goes in those places, if something's in the refrigerator and you're the first person to get there, chances are it's free for everybody, but I wouldn't eat food in the refrigerator unless it's marked. And if you are leaving food for pilgrims that come after you, please mark it free food or something so they know. Because sometimes pilgrims do arrive unprepared. Maybe they are walking on a Sunday and they haven't passed any markets. And it's nice to get there and find a package of macaroni and some sauce or something so they can cook up something for dinner. A lot of times you'll share bathrooms. I think I mentioned that already once, but don't be afraid of sharing bathrooms. If you're renting even private lodgings, even hostel rooms or hotel rooms, sometimes they'll have an option for a shared bathroom and it'll be cheaper. And it's not that big of a deal. So usually if it's a private place, people will go in after you and clean up. So when you go in, then the place is clean, but clean up after yourself. Don't expect that because some places don't do that. If you go in and take a shower, clean up the shower, clean the hair out of the drain, take your dirty laundry with you. But a shared bathroom is pretty common in Spain. Another place that you might see for rent are casa rurales. A casa rural is a farmhouse, basically. It's a house out in the countryside, and sometimes they're small, and sometimes they're big, and sometimes they're really modest, and sometimes they're just magnificent. Don't be afraid to book those. Sometimes you can just book one room. Sometimes you have to book the whole casa. So it depends on whether or not you're in a group or by yourself. They almost always have a kitchen where you can cook. They almost always have a washing machine. And they almost always have extra beds. If you have a big group and you need extra beds for your group, you can ask. Let's see, what else? If all else fails and you're in a village and the municipals are full, you can't find a place to sleep, another thing you might do is go to a bar and ask if they know of any place where you can find a bed, or a habitacione. A habitacione, sometimes you'll be walking down the street, like especially in larger villages, and you'll see a sign up the top. I've seen them in Santiago, I've seen them in Madrid, I've seen them in all the larger villages and cities, and it'll say Habitacione. That means somebody owns an apartment, upstairs probably, and they have a room for rent. And sometimes you can get some pretty sweet deals just renting a Habitacione. Sometimes the lady of the house will cook you a nice homemade meal for not very much money. Almost always it's a private room, and you share a bathroom, but the bathroom and the beds are kept very, very clean because these people are depending on you for extra income. So don't be afraid to rent a Habitacione, and don't forget to look around, especially if you get stuck in a village and all of the albergues are completo. Okay, moving on. Hotels are hotels, just like they say, and they're no different than hotels in the USA. So what's important to know if you're booking ahead for pilgrims are the language that they use for beds. They will offer twin beds, doble, matrimonial. And it's important to know, if you're booking for two pilgrims who are not related, a doble is often what we would call a single bed in the United States. It's like one bed meant for two people to sleep in. If you need two beds, you have to be sure to ask for twin beds or dos camas individuales. A single double bed is often also referred to as a matrimonial bed. A bunk bed is called a litera. Parochials and municipals generally in the past have not allowed you to book ahead. Now, since COVID, some of them are allowing you to. And again, you can look on grons.com and it will tell you whether or not they take reservations. Usually it's first come, first serve. And I would say even in Holy Year, even when it's so busy, if you arrive before 2 p.m., you're probably going to get a bed, unless it's just a tiny little place. But it's always first come, first serve. However, privates, hostels, casa rurals, apartments, and hotels will allow you to book ahead. Some people, especially Americans, get freaked out if they're asked to surrender their passport. Please don't let that bother you. It's required by law that they have to record it. And if they're having a busy day, often they'll ask you to leave your passport. They'll record the information and they'll give it back to you either that night or in the morning. So don't worry about it. They don't want your passport. Just give it to them. Okay, I think because this is getting kind of long, what I'm going to do is make another video with the pictures. So if you want to see pictures, photos of different types of lodgings, then watch Lodgings Part 2. And I'm going to go record that now. Have a buen camino.